All right, let's get right into it. Today, we are tackling two of the trickiest, most loaded words in politics: populism and fascism. We're going to build an ideological toolkit to really understand what separates them. So, populist, fascist. You hear these words thrown around all the time, right? Usually as insults. But what do they actually mean? What is the real, fundamental difference between them? That's the core question we're going to unpack right now. And here's how we're going to do it. First, we'll look at why these labels are so confusing to begin with. Then, we'll define populism, then fascism, using a really clear framework. After that, we'll apply those frameworks to some real-world examples. And finally, we'll get into why this distinction is so important. Okay, so let's start with the problem itself. Why is there so much confusion in the first place? And look, it's not just you. Even political scientists have a tough time pinning these terms down. Well, according to our source material, it boils down to three main things. First, these words are almost always used as insults, slinging mud like demagogic or racist. Second, think about it. How many politicians actually stand up and say, "Hi, I'm a populist," let alone, "I'm a fascist"? Almost none. And finally, we get so distracted by the style, the rallies, the charismatic leader, the uniforms, that we forget to look at the actual ideas, the ideology underneath it all. So, to cut through all that noise, let's build our toolkit, starting with populism. And the key thing to get here is that it's not a full-blown worldview. It's what academics call a thin ideology. What on earth does thin mean? Well, think of it like a basic frame. It has a core, simple story, a battle between the good, plain people and a corrupt elite. But because it's so thin, it's flexible. It can easily attach itself to other, thicker ideologies. You can have left-wing populism, right-wing populism, you name it. So what does this populist frame actually look like? Well, it rests on three essential pillars. First, the populist claims to be the only one truly defending the plain people. Second, there's a deep, powerful hostility to the elites, who are always painted as corrupt, self-serving, and totally out of touch. And third, the ultimate goal is to make the will of the people the law of the land, period. It's all about empowering the people against the establishment. Okay, now let's add the second part to our toolkit: fascism. This is a whole different animal. It's a much thicker, more complex ideology. Fascism isn't about reforming the system. It's about burning it to the ground and building a whole new world from the ashes. Our source defines fascism as syncretic and utopian. Syncretic just means it mashes a bunch of different, sometimes conflicting ideas together. And utopian, well, it means fascism has this radical, all-consuming vision of a perfect future. And that vision is about creating a totally reborn nation, and even a new kind of person, a new man. All of it hammered into place by a powerful authoritarian state. And just like we did with populism, we can break fascism down into its three core pillars. First, the goal isn't just to help the people, it's to forge a holistic nation, a single, organic whole to fight off threats. Second, it believes a new revolutionary elite must create that new man, someone who is heroic, community-focused, and rejects weak individualistic ideas. And third, it pushes for a third-way state, an economy that's neither capitalist nor communist, but a totally new authoritarian model. And boom, this chart is where it all clicks into place. Let's go head-to-head. How do they see the people? For populism, the people's will is everything. It's still a form of democracy. For fascism, the people are actually seen as weak and incapable of ruling themselves. They need a special elite to lead them. What's the end goal? Populism wants the people to win out over the elites. Fascism wants to forge a whole new nation and a new kind of human. And the state? Populism wants to reform it, make it listen. Fascism wants to create a brand new, all-powerful authoritarian state. See the difference? They're worlds apart. So, now that we have our toolkits with our definitions and pillars, let's put it to the test. Let's apply these frameworks to a couple of leaders who are constantly at the center of this very debate. First up, Juan Perón in Argentina. His legacy is still fiercely debated. Was he a populist hero for the working class, or was he something closer to a European-style fascist? So, the case for Perón being a populist is actually pretty strong. His ideas drew on local Argentinian traditions. He used that classic populist language, railing against the exploitative rich. And here's a key detail. While his government was very powerful, it actually included the working class in decision-making, and he never totally outlawed opposition parties or strikes. But it's not that simple. On the other hand, Our source points out that early Peronism borrowed a lot from the language of fascism. All that talk about national renewal sounds a whole lot like the fascist pillar of creating a holistic nation. He wanted to create a new elite, and he used state control over unions, which lines up with that fascist third way idea. It wasn't a full-blown fascist state, but it was definitely a hybrid, an illiberal democracy. Okay, let's bring it closer to home and apply our toolkit to a more recent and way more contentious example: Donald Trump's 2016 campaign. Just like Perón, he got hit with both of these labels all the time, so let's see how our framework holds up. Now, according to the framework from our source, the populist label fits pretty snugly. His whole message was centered on defending the forgotten common man. He relentlessly attacked a corrupt political class and business elites. He literally framed the election as a choice between special interests or the people. All of this fits those three pillars of populism we talked about almost perfectly. But when we apply our fascist framework, the source argues the label just doesn't stick. Why? Well, if you look for those three fascist pillars, they're not there. There was no grand project to forge a new man or create a new holistic nation. The exclusionary rhetoric was identified as nativist, not as part of a grand theory of racial purity. And critically, while he attacked globalization, he never proposed a radical third-way authoritarian economy to replace capitalism. So, okay, after all that, you might be thinking, why does any of this matter? Aren't these just labels? But getting this distinction right is far, far more than just an academic game. I mean, just listen to this slogan from the Hitler Youth. You are nothing, your nation is everything. That right there gets to the terrifying core of the fascist worldview. It's the complete and total destruction of the individual in favor of the collective state. It is a fundamentally anti-democratic idea. And that brings us to the single most important takeaway from this whole thing. Populism, for all its challenges and for all its flaws, is ultimately a form of democracy. It's built on the idea that the people should rule. Fascism, by its very nature, is the exact opposite. It rejects that idea completely. And if you need any more proof, this quote from Mussolini at the end of his life is absolutely chilling, and it reveals everything. When his project was collapsing, who did he blame? Not himself, not his ideas. He blamed the Italian people. He called them contaminated and sick slaves who had failed him. That's the complete inversion of populism. A populist blames the elites. A fascist blames the people themselves for not being good enough for his grand vision. So we'll end on this, a crucial question that our source poses for the future. We've seen that populism and fascism are ideologically very different. But given that fascist is such a toxic label, could a new form of it emerge today? Could it hide in plain sight, using the more acceptable and familiar language of populism? It's a vital question to keep in mind as we try to make sense of the world we're living in.